Support a kinder, more mindful community. Awaken Pittsburgh's end of year fundraising campaign is happening now. Help us continue to provide essential programs by donating today. Every act of kindness counts. Visit awakenpittsburgh.org to give. Hello, friends. My name is Stephanie Romero, and I am the founder and executive director of Awaken Pittsburgh. I want to welcome you to our podcast, The Ripple Effect. Awaken Pittsburgh is a nonprofit dedicated to fostering well-being, empathy, and compassion for all by teaching and encouraging mindfulness and meditation practices. I also want to take a moment to let you know that Awaken Pittsburgh offers many other opportunities for practice and connection. For example, you can join our online community, which features a space to more deeply explore the topics we cover with our guests. We have weekly posts to spark thought, practice, and reflection. I hope you will come join us to explore, connect with others, and deepen your practice. You can find out more at awakenpittsburgh.org. It is my great pleasure to introduce Brittany Dorazio. With a decade of experience as a practitioner and educator in trauma-informed, mind and body, arts education, alongside over 2 decades as an artist, Britt is dedicated to leveraging the transformative power of the arts, body, and breath. She believes these languages can cultivate profound compassion and restore our connection with ourselves, others, and the land. Britt creates curricula, programming, and projects that integrate meditation, social and emotional learning, somatic movement, theater, music, and writing to facilitate deep personal and collective growth. She is privileged to collaborate with many populations, including educators, practitioners, and neurodivergent and disabled artists. It's my great pleasure to be in conversation with Britt for the Ripple Effect podcast, but also to be working with Britt at Awaken Pittsburgh. So, Britt, I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of all your busy life to have a conversation with me about our topic of kindness today. So thank you for joining me.
Yes, absolutely. So grateful to talk with you about this specifically. Yeah.
Awesome. So I always love to start these conversations with just a question about the role that meditation and mindfulness has played in your life, just to share a path, your path, with people that might be listening, because everyone's way is so different and the role that it plays in their life is so different. So I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, thank you. I will say that, it may start off on a dramatic note here, but one, I am dramatic, and two, it really is that deep. Meditation has saved my life over and over and over again. I historically have struggled with mental health challenges. And when I got to college, I made a deep resolve that I wanted to change my life. And meditation and mindfulness and mind body practices completely shifted my orientation to life. And it started off with trial and error of practice, and then very quickly became a huge part of my life, and then very quickly became my career. So I'm trained in the yogic tradition, Vedic philosophy, as well as somatic practice, embodiment practices. So all things mind, body, breath, as well as arts. And I don't teach anything that I don't practice. So, uh, yeah, every day is an opportunity to get to know myself deeper through meditation, through mindfulness, through somatic practice, through the arts. And um, yeah, eternally grateful that I'm walking this path.
Thanks for sharing about your struggles and also how you have come to practice. And I'm appreciating the idea of trial and error in practice. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really appreciating that because for me, that's the path, right?
It sure
Seeing
is.
seeing what works for each one of us in any given moment because it changes day to day, moment to moment. But I'm curious if there is a kind of go-to practice or like what your day-to-day integration of practice might look like.
Yeah, it's definitely changed over time. Um, I can speak to what I'm practicing right now. I am doing a lot of ancestral work right now, and a lot of like protection meditations where connecting in with the earth as well as my crown, and however we want to describe universal energy moving through us, kind of that as above, so below connection, as well as feeling my ancestors at my back. Um, and that is just right now. And it really is just a very easy drop in process for me at this point. And I will also say that part of my practice right now is holding my 8-year-old self. Um, that is a specific age that uh, little me experienced a lot at that age. And so helping her feel safe, um, it's like an immediate dropping into my body and, yeah, feeling of safety. So as above, so below, feeling the support at my back as well as nourishing my inner child. But over time, it's changed. For a long time, I did guided practices with David G or Thich Nhat Hanh, or doing guided meditations that my mentor that I did my training with offered to me. And also loving kindness uh, has been a huge through line for me. And I also do a lot of chakra work too. Working with the chakras has been very, very helpful for me. So it ebbs and it flows, and it really is a moment to moment listening to what I need. But it tends to be within seasons. So since about August, I've been doing this current practice, and I try to allow myself space for the pivoting and shifting.
And do you find yourself setting aside like a specific time of day, or how do you integrate into your daily life?
Yeah, I try to meditate 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. Um, in terms of Vedic meditation, that is the practice. Yeah, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. And also, right now, I'm in a show. And so, before my show, every day, I have to meditate, making sure that my mind is right. So, I'm meditating more throughout the day right now, just because life is very demanding currently. But typically, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. And I also loved you naming safety because I
Mhm.
just feel like that's so foundational for so many of us, especially folks that may have experienced trauma or significant loss.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that if we don't have that basis or that underlying feeling of safety, sometimes it's hard to do any practice.
100%. And it's a practice,
Hmm.
of um if we've experienced trauma, if we're not a person that naturally wakes up every day and is like, I feel safe and whole and complete in my body, um, taking the intentional time to build that safety slowly over time. Um, yeah, that's what's required. As a meditation teacher, I try to implore that message of like, it really is just a slow chipping away of, or slow building, of creating that safety within the body.
Yeah, thank you. Well,
Mm-hmm.
today our topic is kindness. And so I thought we could start by just exploring the relationship between kindness and mindfulness practices,
Mm-hmm.
maybe your personal practice, whatever you feel like you would like to share about that.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this, kindness feels like one of those words that is maybe a little oversaturated in the zeitgeist, used a lot, but maybe falls flat in terms of how it actually shows up, from uh, how we actually use it or how we embody it. And so when I was thinking about kindness, what that actually means to me, it feels like intentionality and generosity and consideration. Um, and compassion is one of my root values. Um, and my mindfulness practice, it really is about intentionality. I feel like that bridge between kindness and mindfulness is that intentionality, right? The one description of meditation is that it's peeling back the layers to understand yourself. And as I continue to know myself, I continue to become more intentional in my day to day life, which helps me be more present and intentional with how I treat other people, how I treat myself, how I treat my cats, how I treat the earth. Um, and so, yeah, that intentionality piece, we talk a lot, right, in our programming of that space between stimulus and response. And the more that we practice that mindfulness or meditation or whatever the contemplative practice is, that space becomes a little bit wider. And there's a whole well of possibilities of what I can choose from within that intentionality. So, yeah, just every interaction becomes more sacred, I would say. Yeah.
I like how you're naming this intersection of our intentionality with also some kind of well wish for another human,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or for ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because kindness has that like you said link to compassion,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's some kind of an action. It's more of an active, for me at least, an active quality, because I can sit and feel compassion on my own,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something in kindness that feels like an activity. I wonder how that lands for you.
Absolutely. And of course, there are like ways that we can perform random acts of kindness and things like that. But I also like this idea of generosity or like openness of spirit to be, or open heartedness to be present enough with someone um, to know what the moment requires, to feel supportive and helpful for someone. That is where the action comes in, I think, of being present and open enough to meet the moment or meet the person that is in front of me.
Yeah, and there's the tie-in with the mindfulness practice of being fully present in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's for me where you're making that great connection to just our present moment experience, fully being there, open in an open-hearted way, to allow that compassion to become an activity, to,
Mm-hmm.
to allow that compassion to spill out
Mm-hmm.
into the world and touch someone else.
Yeah.
And I guess there we could shift it to how then do you work with that with yourself?
Mm.
How do you bring self-kindness or self-compassion
Mm.
into that work of being open-hearted in the present moment? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It is. I feel like there's so much I could say here. Uh, I also feel, I feel like we hear a lot about, you can't be kind to other people until you're kind to yourself. Um, there's an aspect of that that I believe in. And I also feel like it is this synergistic exchange, because there have been times where I'm being so hard on myself, but I can be extremely open hearted and kind to my neighbors or my local barista or, strangers, or my loved ones even. Um, And vice versa, right? There have been times in my life where I've been very depressed, right? And I'm not nice to anyone, including myself. So, yeah, I feel like that well of kindness shows up in different ways. But in terms of being kind to myself, um, I think for a long time I've been in that pattern of I have to fix myself, I have to be better, I have to be better, I have to be better. Um, until I would say maybe, I've been practicing mindfulness and meditation for like 13 years now, 13 years. And I would say only within the past 2 to 3 years have I really understood that I don't need to be fixed. And that because I have spent so much time in that place, the amount of self kindness that is required for me is like that is always going to be the soothing balm. That's always going to be the medicine for me. When I'm in that, looping patterns of being mean to myself or putting myself down, the thing that nourishes me the most is whenever I actually pause and I'm like, no, let me just hold myself. Let me honor what I'm feeling and let me slow down. Let me breathe with myself. Let me witness myself, be with myself. Um, so it is like the deepest medicine that I have found for me to be kind to myself and to just honor where I am moment to moment.
I love this idea of witnessing ourselves, right? Because I think a lot of times when I work with people, they'll be like, I do my mindfulness practice in the garden or jogging or swimming or whatever, fill in the blank. And that's all beautiful. Like, not to say
Mhm.
that's not wonderful, but there's this particular thing that happens in meditation where you're actually growing to know your mind and heart that
Mhm.
I think I like to bring my mindfulness practice into walking my dogs or in the garden or swimming.
Mhm.
And it's not quite the same because we're not witnessing ourselves in the same way as when we're totally still and
Yes.
just noticing. And so I love that you're naming that it's not just the pause that we take so that our reactivity towards others or towards life is worked with in a different way, but it's also the pause with self.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. We live in such a distracted world. Um, and it's just so easy. It's so easy to incorporate a ton of different things with mindfulness practices. And they all can be very supportive. And exactly as you're saying, when I'm really dropped in to myself from a place of stillness, and it takes time to get there, right? I'm sure that there are some people that can just do that, and have been able to do that. But for me personally, it has taken, um, yeah, much practice to be able to drop down into myself and really be there and see what is there. And I also think for a lot of us, right, the fear of seeing what is there uh, uh, can be overwhelming. But I have found that the more that I ignore that witnessing, ignore that dropping down into myself, things just become more chaotic. And whenever I actually take the time to drop down, and now I have to do it every day, it's just, yeah, it's a completely different experience. And it's an act of deep self-love. It really is. Of like, I deserve to be witnessed by myself, from myself, with myself, through myself. It's yeah, it's again, it just feels like the deepest medicine for me.
Yeah, and what you're just saying there ties back to the idea of I have to fix myself, right?
Mhm.
And I think we all, those of us who want to be our best selves in the world, right? Have this little thing in us that in mine can be unhealthy perfectionism sometimes, I think too.
Mhm.
But there is, you want to be your best self and therefore you have this idea of fixing, improving, self-help, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And yet there is in I'm just thinking of Sunri Suzuki Roshi's book,
Mhm.
Beginner's Mind, where he has that amazing quote that I always love to quote, which
Mhm.
is, "You are perfect just the way you are, and
Mhm.
you could use a little work."
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, unless we have that idea of our fundamental basic wholeness and
Yes.
goodness, that at the bottom of everything, every human being, just by our birthright, has, the worthiness to receive respect and love and care just because we are a whole human,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But there's that. And, sometimes we fall a little short in behaviors
Mhm.
or whatever. So we can't, so it, we were just talking, I think before I started recording, about there's always the both and, right? There's
Yes.
always the both and. So how do we hold the fact that actually we don't have to fix ourselves?
Mhm.
We can just be with ourselves,
Mhm.
and sometimes maybe we need to examine behavior or reactivity or whatever, fill in the blank, right?
Yes. Yeah, if I could speak to that for a second, I think for me, and hopefully this isn't getting too off topic, but the finding peace with our, like, the paradox of life, and finding peace with our contradictions. Yeah, the thing that anchors me right now, similar, is just I am whole and I am healing. Um, it's just always going to be that way. I think as human beings, we really want the black and white answer of, okay, I did the work. And so now I'm here, right? I've arrived. And I also think that at this point, like the mainstream wellness things that are floating around via social media, and I know that you personally are not on social media, and just don't, if you haven't thus far, just don't. But the just inundation of information of, there's this supplement and there's this practice and there's this community group and there's this and there's this and there's this and there's this, it I think that our psyche naturally latches onto, I'm not doing enough. Um and there's also these marketing plans of, like, find the pain point within people so that they feel like they have to do more, you know and instead of encouraging this sense of wholeness. um yeah, so wholeness and healing, and not falling into the trap of always needing to do more and always needing to do more. But there's a different essence when you're dropped into yourself and asking yourself, what do I actually need? Instead of seeking externally for it.
Yeah, I love that whole and healing. I don't even think it's a paradox. I was just, as you were speaking, thinking to myself, the other thing you and I were checking it before we turn on the record is just how life transitions continue to evolve as we age and as we grow. And, I'm in the transition period right now where my daughter's about to have a baby, my first grandchild. My
Mhm.
mom is aging and isn't in the best of health. And I've never had this situation in my life before. And so everything is evolving and changing and nothing is static. And so, therefore, we are continuously needing to grow and change ourselves.
Yes.
And so, if we just cut ourselves the break, this is the link back to the kindness, right? If we just can cut ourselves a break and say, I've never been this particular age in this particular situation. Therefore,
Mhm.
maybe I don't have it all figured out, and that's okay.
Yes. Yes. Yes, 100%. And yeah, just giving ourselves grace in general of, like, the conditions that we've been given in life, right? This is a very dense place. And you know, even, like, people in my life have given me an immense amount of grace, and oftentimes when people are coming to, I often receive a lot of apologies. I think that's also just an innate thing that we do, right? Of, like, I'm sorry that I didn't get to this, or I'm sorry that, I think that at this point of life, we have to extend grace to ourselves and each other, at a level that is, like, yeah, just a little bit more right now, because the conditions that we're in are they're just intense all the time.
Yeah. And that kind of links to when we have difficult situations or difficult people, really trying intentionally to bring in that kindness. And you're using the word grace, but I would say that it's a kindness.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So when we confront those people that we feel the most challenging, when we confront those situations internally or externally, like that could potentially, what I'm hearing you say, just kind of take the edge off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we all want and need that. It's like we all want to be understood. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. And when we're not seen, heard, understood, it makes us very dysregulated and feel very isolated and othered. And when we actually extend that grace and compassion and kindness to ourselves and each other, there's just a different space that opens up, right? There's more possibilities that open up. Um, yeah. And I also think that kindness can show up in ways that maybe we don't think about kindness. Challenging conversations, having the courage to have challenging conversations can actually be the kindest thing that we can do sometimes instead of ignoring things. You know, being willing to have difficult conversations or sit with someone in the muck or the ick of something can be one of the kindest things that we can do. Letting things go can be a really, really kind thing to do. Historically, if you're a caretaker of some kind, instead of fixing someone's problem, simply just allowing people to have agency and autonomy over their own situation can be the kindest thing you can do. So there's just a lot of ways I think that kindness can show up aside from just the typical ways that we think of.
I love what you're naming there. There was I think it was a talk that I heard years and years ago by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who talked about idiot compassion,
Mm,
right? And so it was, I'm pretty sure that's who it was. But the idea was just what you were saying, like sometimes if you are enabling someone with your quote unquote kindness or compassion,
mhm.
you're preventing them from actually actualizing what they need to actualize in themselves for their own agency. And
Yes.
that actually, and we know there are a lot of terms for that, right? Helicopter parents is one of the ones that comes to mind, where they're actually preventing the kid from building resilience,
Yes.
because there's so much intervening. I gave a presentation to university level educators not too long ago. And one of the things I heard is some of the young people aren't sure how to reach out for help themselves because up until that point, their parents were doing it for them.
Oof. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love what you're saying. Like there's this kind of idiot compassion so that my term that I used to hear all the time is tough love, that tough love where you're like setting the boundaries and you're kind
Yes.
of doing that work that can be kind. And then there's this big question, like especially as a mom I really feel this because my inner mama bear is so fierce and I want to protect all my kids, right?
Same. Oh my goodness. Same. Yeah.
Where's the like how do you have that discernment to know what's the kindest, most helpful
Hmm.
thing in that situation?
Yeah. I do think that for me, because I often, especially when it comes to kids, it's like I am like definitely a fierce protector when it comes to children. um, and that and I've gotten myself into tough situations because I can't use that discernment. um, and yeah, because when we look at children, there is the not a helpless element, but well, I can access more, I can do more right now because I'm an adult, whatever the case may be. Um, and for me personally, what that comes back to is my values. Um, if I'm really clear on what my values are, which I have like my top 5, but then my discernment is strengthened because I can say to myself, is this situation something that I'm available for or something that I'm not available for based on what is aligned with my values or not, right? And then also releasing the black and white thinking, because in between there is a full spectrum of possibilities of ways I can take action, or I can sit back, or I can have a conversation, or whatever the case is. But coming back to my root values of like, if I were to jump down this person's throat based on this experience, is that something that's actually aligned with my values? Sometimes it could be, but sometimes it's not. you know yeah, discernment is huge, and I won't dive deep into that because then this will be a podcast about discernment, but it's a big one.
Maybe that's a topic for the future
Yeah.
because that's a tough one, right? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
And I guess just hearing you speak on that, I love that you named that you have a top 5 values. I love that. That just shows your reflective depth. So I just want to kind of be like, that's really cool.
Thank you.
And the other thing, as you were talking, is again, just even taking the pause to ask the question, does this align with my values? Shows that integral piece of just bringing that mindfulness practice into, if I want to be a kind person, if that is something that's important to me, I'm going to need to pause and reflect on what's the best course of action.
Yeah.
So we're coming back to that pause again somehow.
Mhm. Yeah, it's always back to the intentionality, which is one of my root values, right? Because if I move from a place of urgency, which is something that I'm battling all the time, or rather not even battling, just trying to make peace with, right? There's a quickening that happens within me whenever I feel like something needs to be done right now. And the medicine for that is intentionality, which then inevitably makes me a kinder, more thoughtful person, more considerate person, more generous person. And if I sink into intention, right, intending kindness, um, into that intentionality, I'm usually just making a more thoughtful decision than moving from a place of urgency.
Yeah. And I feel like everything about our world pushes us towards urgency.
100%.
Buy it now or lose the chance to get this 10% discount, or I
Yes.
don't know, whatever,
All of it. I mean,
whatever,
it's
whatever.
everywhere.
Yeah, it's everything. It's everything. Everything is urgent. And actually, um, I'm a big fan of, I don't know if you've ever heard, but in Italy, they have like the slow food movement and the
Yes.
slow city movement. Like, I'm a big fan of that. Like, that's my
Mm-hmm.
dream situation where we
Same.
yeah, like let's just slow cook everything and like roast
Mhm.
it slowly, and and that in our relation, everything, right? Everything should be like that. But it's hard.
100%.
It's really, really hard to go against that urgency.
Yeah,
So thank you
especially
for naming that.
absolutely, especially in the United States, it is, yeah, everything is right now, right
Mm-hmm.
now, right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. For real. Well, we've
Yes.
been talking a lot about intra and interpersonal, and I'm wondering if we could take it out just a little bit and broaden our ideas about, because I always am about how do I support individuals to transform their own mental health and well-being so that we can affect larger change, like organizational or societal. So
Mhm.
I'm just curious what you think about cultivating kindness as a tool to impact broader change or bring
Mhm.
about broader change.
Yeah. Yes. Well, again, I feel like I could go in a lot of different directions with this. Um, but the first word that's kind of popping up to me right now is this idea of networks. Um, One, I work very closely with the nervous system, and our nervous systems are always in conversation with each other. So even if we are not speaking to each other, there is a uh, neurobiological connection happening all the time between us. And so whatever we are transmitting, right, is felt. Um, and So being intentional with our own energy, with our bodies, with our words, with our thoughts, um, and like our nervous system is our information highway, right? So it's always receiving information from the external world and the internal world. And that those sensations of when you walk into the room and you were feeling fine, and then all of a sudden you feel kind of anxious because maybe someone in that space is feeling anxious, right? Or vice versa. Maybe you walk into a space and previously you were feeling anxious, and then there's someone in there that you trust and you feel that co-regulation, that grounding happening. And I feel like that's happening all the time, like that kind of nervous system network within ourselves and within us as people. And then I think of that from like a team perspective, right? People that we work with. Um, I'm finding, unfortunately, like across the board, almost everywhere that I work, except for Awaken Pittsburgh. um, yeah, there's just a lot of, I shouldn't say everywhere. That's definitely a hyperbole. I would say most systems and like, yeah, team strategies and things like that, and ways of connecting to get things done collaboratively, still have that sense of urgency, right? So the, um, yeah, I'll just speak specifically to Awaken Pittsburgh. There is a generosity and intentionality in terms of how we all communicate, and an honesty and transparency of like, hey, we don't really know what we're doing, maybe, but this is what's going on. And here's the support that we can offer. What do you need? You know, all of these things. And unfortunately, that is not happening in most structures and systems. Um, and then I think about the earth, and I think about the way that trees take care of each other and mushrooms take care of each other, and how all of these different ecosystems work together to take care of each other. Um, and so these are just all of the kind of pockets that I'm thinking about. But from the personal to the systemic, it's all connected. And when I think about colonization, right? Colonization is the practice of separating. So any way that we can start to unify our connection with ourselves, each other, and the earth, right? That is the medicine for separation. And so I think any ways that we do that, whether it's through meditation or being kind to someone or connecting intentionally with the earth or moving slowly and eating slowly and cooking slowly and supporting local farmers or whatever it is, there's a million ways to bridge gaps and find connective tissue. Like I really believe in that ripple effect. I really believe that. And I used to be, you know, a huge like mainstream social justice worker, I would say, and thought I had to do everything. And when I actually understood that these one-on-one connections, the way that I treat my waiter, the way that I treat this person, the way that I treat this person, that ripple effect is huge. Um, that yeah, I really believe in that. And uh, justice and healing and liberation happen in micro moments, not just in these like huge, you know, huge ways that we see. So a little tangent there, but
No, I totally love it. And you know, I agree. The thing that was coming to my mind as you were speaking there at the end is I read this book. I think it's called The Gandhian Iceberg, but
hmm,
it's all about the foundation of Gandhi's movement that he created, his peaceful resistance movement in India, that people don't realize that the base of that iceberg that we never saw were like years and years and years of meditation and training and like virtue training, actually, like working spirituality so that people would be in the right mindset to be able to be nonviolent
yes,
and affect change. And
yes,
so I, yeah, that book was really awesome to help me understand that actually working with ourselves is the foundation for social change. And I think that's part of what you were naming. But I just wanted to take it like one step
Yes.
further to say, like, yes, those micro moments definitely have that ripple. Like, I believe they have that ripple effect, and they definitely um, can transform a system if you get enough people doing it,
Hmm.
right? And the deep work that we do to train ourselves and train
And
our
to
minds
know ourselves,
and to know ourselves
you know?
exactly.
Yeah, like we
It's
have like weird behavior comes out whenever we don't know ourselves,
yes,
with grace
yes,
and love. I've
yeah.
done really weird stuff whenever
We
like I
all
don't,
have.
whenever I don't know myself or I
Yeah.
treat
Yeah.
someone, not as kindly as I can, or I'm just not thinking or being intentional, but doing that foundational work of understanding the many layers of myself, um yeah, helps me see that connective thread and really understand that that is the best way that I personally can serve,
Yes.
is by deeply knowing myself.
Yeah.
And just a resource I would love to share,
Please.
um,
That was going to be my next question.
is it's called the Social Change Ecosystem Map, um, by Deepa. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing Ayer. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce their last name. Um, and it basically it puts all of these different roles. It's like on a wheel, and understanding which roles you occupy best, right? Are you the disruptor? Are you the healer? Are you the first responder? Are you maybe a combination of a few? And when I got very clear on what I was, because I was trying to be all of them, I was trying to be all 9 of them, or what, however many there are. But really, like, got very clear on the 3 that I am. Um, it helped me sit back and understand where I can be most effective. Again, this goes back to kindness of like when I know my role, when I know how I'm most effective and most helpful, um, then that affects the larger whole, um, just in a clearer way.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Is
Mhm.
there a particular mindfulness resource that you would like to share?
There are so many stuff. um,
Do you have a favorite or one that you've gone back to and reread or?
well, I will say that I feel like loving kindness practice, um, is, I think, really foundational, and it completely shifts our mindset, right? There's a portion of the meditation around loving someone that you have disagreement with, right? Sending love and ease to someone who you have a lot of reverence for, sending love and ease to someone who you feel neutrally about, and then sending love and ease to yourself and then the world at large, right? And so covering those bases consistently and tuning into that frequency of, um, love, ease, health, happiness for all beings everywhere. Um, I think it just really orients us to life in a specific way. So I would just encourage all of us to do more of that.
Yeah. And if anyone is interested, we do have a video of that practice linked on our Awaken website. And I will say for me personally, I did that practice as my daily practice for a good year and a half, gosh, some
Mhm.
time ago. And it really, yeah, when that's your go-to,
Mhm.
it shifts something. It
Big.
does shift something in you, in the way you approach things and the way you show up.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks. That's one of my favorites. Is there anything I didn't ask about that you wanted to share that you had in your mind before we hopped on the call?
I don't think so. I think that, hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It all comes back to presence, if I'm being honest. Everything that we're talking about, it just really all comes back down to, being present enough with ourselves, and with life and with what moment is in front of us, to know what helps effectively, just to simplify it and draw a through line there. Because I can go into all these large concepts and all of these things, but really whenever I boil it back down, it comes down to presence and intentionality to what is here.
Well, that's a great place to end, I feel. So I will say thank you for joining me on the call, Britt. And gosh, always a pleasure and inspirational for me to talk to you.
Same. Seriously. Thank you for everything. Appreciate you.
Join us in spreading kindness and mindfulness this season. Awaken Pittsburgh's end-of-year fundraiser is in full swing, and your support can help us bring our transformative programs to those who need it most. Donate today at awakenpittsburgh.org.
Say Something Studios.